beautiful week is upon us. Add to that, another beautiful Monday morning is here. Welcome to the Morning Brief. We're live for you in Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
Indeed, Kayode, it's another day in rainy June, and the rains have been relentless, the character of which we could all borrow something from, and be relentless as well in the pursuit of our dreams. Good morning and welcome to your perfect day starter on television. I am Bukola Koga.
It's officially the very last month in the first half of the year, June, and 10 days down the line. I like to just keep you in that consciousness, to just take stock of how you've been living your life and making the most of your moment, or the best of the moment you have as far as your life, your career, your business, your family, your whatever it is concerned. Welcome to the program. I'm Jeffrey Uzoma.
Oh yes, if you're going to borrow anything from the rain, just borrow the persistence, the consistency. Do not borrow the violence. Okay, do not borrow the flooding. Well, if you want to flood anything, flood your dreams with energy, right? Let's take
results.
the good sides and results, because it looks like the rains have been quite consistent, as I said, with that energy, with the violence of sorts. And it's good to see, at least where I stay, seeing that people are taking they're taking measures to clear drainages. And you just see things coming out of those drainage channels, and you're like, what? So these things are there, no brainer then that we have flash floods all around, but I hope that we can stay consistent with that. So what happens is, after another rain or round of rains, it moves all of those trash back to the channel. So it's important to keep doing this so we don't have the flash floods. But coming out this morning, guys, it looked like there's a public holiday today, because the streets were a bit deserted, and I was thinking, has Labour given a statement or not? Or is there a public holiday that I'm not aware of? It's not typical of a Monday, but I do hope that that's not the same where you are, that your Monday is starting off with that energy. Did you guys notice that?
Perhaps, maybe some children are on midterm break, so the level of vehicular movement, morning runs,
so these children are responsible for like half of most of it.
It's a lot of responsibility when you have the number of children you have in Nigeria. So when they are home, there's a little bit of calm, so you don't see things happening in between cars. Sit down there, Junior. We're on the express. So all of that has been shifted to the house.
And for some of us, we're not chasing about ironing school uniforms, asking them to wash them, and getting prepared the lunch boxes. At least we have some respite. And, it also reflects in those usual conflict points when you're traveling down to work. They're slightly less congested, and you can get to work a bit more early.
Especially those points where close to the schools now, where there's a huge traffic in and out, drop off and all of that. So I guess that's what's responsible, partly, perhaps.
We imagine the children are watching. We love you. We still love you. We always love you. But it's quite interesting, because you have, for some states, they had their midterm break last week for a whole week, and for some other states this week. So it just keeps changing. But if you're a child and you're watching, we love you. Okay, this is part of the sacrifice we love to do. So it's nothing but love from the side of the divide.
And there's something I think
an abundance and overflow of it, actually, from us to you.
I just remember something. I told myself, if I forget, I'm not going to forgive myself. I remember we're having a conversation about open defecation, and Iman proposed, one of our producers, Emmanuel, proposed a strict penalty. So there's no point government congesting prisons or police cells. No. So if you're caught, especially those of you who decide that Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is where you go and do the do, if you understand what I mean. So we're proposing to the federal government, rather than take people inside car vehicle, take them to police station, why are you wasting your time? Just make sure those car vehicles have a lot of water and things to wash. You're caught, you're sentenced immediately, and start doing your assignment. Community service.
Cleaning the feces, right?
The thief is the person they catch, or the person who is caught in the act is the thief. So 1,000 people may have done it, but unfortunately you're the one that is the culprit here. So you clean the entire place. When you clean twice in a month. You may have to have a rethink.
Okay.
That's our proposal, right?
So,
that's a good proposal for the Ministry of Environment here in Lagos and the equivalent in Ogun State as well, because it should be a joint responsibility.
But it's a federal government road.
It doesn't matter, because federal government can cede that responsibility to the state.
So they have to be, because you called out to the federal government, so they have to take charge, and then the states now contribute.
Yeah, cede it to state government, so that, say state government, we own the road, you own the median.
Okay, there you go. Well, a lot of people have been traumatized by that route, and that's where this is coming from. But what do we have for you on the show this morning? Let's get right into it. This week, actually, the rubber meets the road. It's a very, very crucial week right here in Nigeria, particularly with the new minimum wage negotiation. It's the moment of truth when we'll find out if Labour will be shutting down the nation again, or if it will be accepting the 62,000 naira offer from the federal government. And the other question that we'll be finding answers to is, what will states and organized private sector finally agree to pay? So it's a crucial week, and we're diving deep into that one this morning.
And besides, the agitation about what the new minimum wage will be, we're also turning our attention to football. And it was not the very best of weekends for Nigerian football. It began with the Super Eagles' draw against South Africa, then the controversial call at the Oriental Derby in Enugu, which saw the title decider abandoned. But we will see a redemption with the Super Eagles later today against Benin Republic. What do you guys think?
Well, we'll see it. I don't even want to go there. It's too early. But that's not all. And we go on to cruise quite literally from football with a young man called Joe, who is on a mission to project Nigeria's culture to the world using comedy. But this relentless, restless Nigerian entrepreneur has also ventured into other things. We'll find out from this gentleman what he's all about besides his comedy.
Absolutely. But that's not all. You have a chance to be a huge part of the show. As always, we're tracking your reactions across social media, and your comments are up in, as usual, about 10-15 minutes. So keep them coming in. We're taking it on YouTube, we're taking it on X, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. So you see the WhatsApp number right on your screen. That is how you can reach out to us with your comments. If you've got videos as well, send them in. There you go. That is the golden number to reach the morning brief on. So keep them coming. Or you can also do hashtag CTV Morning Brief, so we can appropriately curate your comments on the show. We're starting off with the top stories right now. The stories will be shaping the conversation today and in the coming days. You don't want to miss this. Stay with us right here. Well, it's a crucial week for the nation as we wait to see how Labour responds to the minimum wage offer. But a security breach is top on the brief this morning as a parish priest of St. Thomas Catholic Church Zaman Dabo community in Zango Kataf local government area of Kaduna State, Reverend Father Gabriel Luke, has been kidnapped by bandits. He was said to have been abducted by the bandits in the early hours of Sunday morning. According to the statement by the Vicar General of the Catholic Diocese, Reverend Father Emmanuel Kaza, the act has been condemned, which is described as incessant kidnappings for ransom of innocent and defenseless citizens in the area, while asking the government to step up its security intelligence. Well, this is a developing story I will follow to bring you more details. But in neighboring local government areas, troops of the Nigerian Army deployed for counter-terrorism operations conducted a two-day fighting patrol to Kaduru and Kachia local government areas of the state, during which they neutralized 5 terrorists at Dantaro. A statement from the Department of Army Public Relations says, after defeating the terrorists, the gallant troops recovered a cache of arms and ammunitions. But elsewhere in Zamfara State, troops deployed along the Gusosa Fifentua Road responded responding to a distress call, killed 2 bandits and successfully thwarted a kidnap attempt. But that's not all. In Abia State, southeast Nigeria, troops conducted a raid operation on an identified IPOB ESN enclave located in Igboro Forest in Arochukwu local government area, where they successfully recovered locally fabricated rocket-propelled grenades, RPGs, and artillery guns. Well, let's talk politics now, particularly election matters. The Yobe State Independent Electoral Commission has declared that the All Progressives Congress APC has won all the 17 chairmanship seats and 178 councillorship positions in the just concluded local government elections. Announcing the winners after a collation of all the results, the executive chairman of the commission, Dr. Maman Mohammed, explained that other political parties participated but could not win at any level. The state electoral umpire is expected to present certificates of return to the winners, while they're sworn in by the executive governor, Ogoni, will be at a later date.
We considered certain parameters. We identified the local government. And total number of registered voters and total number of rejected voters and total number of casted voters to enable us judge who is the winner in that local government. And now, conclusively, the APC has won all the 17 seats of the local government election in Yobe State.
Party politics. Leaders of the Kaduna State chapter of the Labour Party are accusing the party's presidential candidate in the 2023 election, Mr. Peter Obi, and his running mate, Dati Baba Ahmed, of allegedly pursuing their personal ambitions rather than making efforts to reposition the party and intervene in the crisis rocking the party in the state and other states. The Labour Party leaders, including those who contested for various elective positions in the elections and acting state executive members, berated Mr. Obi for what they called his failure to hold post-election meeting with the party stakeholders in Kaduna, despite his several visits to the state.
There seems to be a total absence of leadership in the state Labour Party, despite being lucky to have had the vice presidential candidate, the national secretary, and other top figures of the national level down to the state. These political powerhouses who are from Kaduna State seem to have joined this movement only to propel their career and have blown cold since election results were announced on all levels. They have refused to consider the epileptic stake of the party's existence, especially the common man on the street who lost his voice and sense of decorum, singing and chanting the songs of the Labour Party. By extension, those of us present here today who in our various constituencies work tirelessly to ensure that our names were written in sands of time as regards Kaduna State and Nigerian politics. A stark example is our dear presidential candidate during the 2023 elections, Mr. Peter Obi, who on several occasions came into Kaduna but never thought it worthy or necessary to invite the leadership of the party and his team and his esteemed supporters in the state for a round table to sit and review our past activities, especially those in the Northwest Zone. He has chosen his personal ambition rather than putting the people first by reconciling our differences and healing our wounds. We expected him to have called for zonal meetings. Each zone, identify the gaps and cement the cracks that almost collapsed our efforts. We urge Peter Obi not to shy away from the fact that he is the leader of the party and by extension the party's presidential flag bearer, whose responsibility is to put the house in order. In spite of this, we appreciate his efforts and salute his courage. For those who followed the Labour Party, the fact that funds for campaign were misappropriated by a few individuals who to date have not thought it right to render public accounts of how these funds were either disbursed or spent is no longer news. However, the question that begs for an answer is that a sign of true leadership that defines transparency and accountability? No. You recall, gentlemen, that Mr. Peter Obi had given his own personal account of the monies that came through him for the campaign for the 2023 elections. We are expecting that the leadership of the party should do the same if they have not done that up to today.
Well, quite a lot going on in the Labour Party. But let's talk about the federal government now. President Bola Tinubu has approved the appointment of Dr. Nkiruka Madueke as the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of the National Council on Climate Change in an interim capacity, pending the confirmation of her appointment by the NCCC Supervisory Council. According to the Special Advisor on Media, during Galali to the President, he also approved that Dr. Madueke, aged 39, is to serve as the co-chairperson of the Intergovernmental Committee on National Carbon Market Activation Plan. The President also approved the appointment of Mr. Ibrahim Shelling as a Senior Special Assistant to the President on Climate Finance and Stakeholder Engagement. Also appointed as a Senior Special Assistant to the President on Climate, Technology and Operations Office of the President, and Mr. Olamide Fagbuji. The Joint National Association of Persons with Disabilities, in collaboration with the Association of Widows in Nigeria, are calling on President Tinubu to appoint a notable person with disability as the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. Addressing a news conference in the nation's capital, the national president of the association, Mr. Abdullah Usman, says it has become imperative to have a leader who understands and prioritizes the challenges faced by persons with disabilities and marginalized groups as the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation.
We considered certain parameters. We identified the local.
Moving on to the oil sector now. Apologies for that. Some indigenes of Ogoni in River State are demanding the establishment of the Ogoni Development Authority as a non-negotiable condition for allowing oil exploration activities to resume on their land. The indigenes made the demand under the banner of the Movement for the Survival of Ogoni People, MOSOP, during a special congress held in Kokana local government area. The MOSOP members said the creation of a development authority in line with the 1990 Ogoni Bill of Rights will ensure that the benefits of oil extraction are directly channeled into the development and welfare of the local communities.
We will not accept any option that does not consider the position of MOSOP on Ogoni oil. And what is MOSOP saying? What MOSOP is saying is that the Ogoni Development Authority should be operationalized. I will tell you what that simply means. The document in your hand is the document on Ogoni Development Authority. It says and demands 20% of the resources that comes out of Ogoni should be committed to Ogoni development. It means simply that we will be able to use the funds that come from Ogoni to build an Ogoni economy.
MOSOP is saying that if you are coming to resume oil operation in Ogoni land, that this is our quota. You must give.
We need work. We can sweep on the road. We need to have our houses. We need to have the freedom. We need to have our oil. We need to have our water. We don't want to be begging from what we have.
And to business, it's a significant trade surplus of 6.52 trillion naira for Nigeria's foreign trade in the first quarter of the year. And this is a significant recovery from the 1.41 trillion trade deficit recorded in the previous quarter, 2023, and the 927 billion naira in the same period of 2023. That's Q1. According to the NBS report, total exports for Q1 2024 were valued at 19 trillion naira, representing a 51% increase from the previous quarter's 12.69 trillion naira and a 195.47% rise from 6 trillion naira recorded in Q1 last year. The record data is also fueled by exchange rate depreciation. And outside the country, Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz has quit the emergency government in a sign of deepening divisions over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's post-conflict plans for Gaza. Speaking during a news conference in Tel Aviv on Sunday, where he announced his resignation, Mr. Gantz said the decision was made with a heavy heart. In his words, Mr. Netanyahu is preventing us from approaching true victory, which is a justification for the painful ongoing crisis. He also called on Mr. Netanyahu to set a date for elections, as is considered by some to be a potential challenger for power in Israel. Meanwhile, Mr. Netanyahu has responded with a post saying, Benny, this is not the time to quit the campaign. This is a time to join forces. And pilgrims from around the world are arriving at King Abdulaziz International Airport to a warm welcome from the officials of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the 2024 Hajj. The organizers say preparations are well underway to ensure that over 1 million pilgrims have a smooth Hajj experience. An improvement towards enhancing the pilgrims' experience is the launch of a Nusuk card service, providing comprehensive guidance for the pilgrims. And to sports news, Rangers versus Yobe game has been abandoned following a late penalty call in favor of the Flying Antelopes in a Week 35 Nigeria Premier Football League match at the Nnamdi Azikiwe Stadium in Enugu. Now, Sunday's potential title decider, which is also tagged the Oriental Derby, with the Rangers topping the league standings with 60 points and Yobe trailing them by 2 points, saw the game tied goalless, and the referee pointed to the spot late in the game, awarding Rangers a penalty. Now, that decision did not go well with Yobe players who protested the decision. While efforts were made to resume play, the game turned chaotic when some fans invaded the pitch, disrupting the highly anticipated match. Well, those are the top stories at this hour, but let's walk through what your talking points are as we head over to the social media space now. Bukola joins me to do that.
Yes, hello again, Kayode. And one of the things that is biggest on the minds of Nigerians, of course, is the new minimum wage negotiations.
Oh, yes.
And some have said, Kayode, that perhaps the piecemeal additions, to government's offer is because we have a woman, a mother, as the Minister of Labour. You know how mothers are when they go to the market and they're negotiating for especially meat, and they're like, okay, can I pay 10,000 naira? And the meat seller probably started at, maybe 25,000 naira, and the mother continues to add 11, 12.
Coming from me, I'm not going to enter that particular
13,
debate.
and then the seller says, okay, go. I'm not selling.
So that's what we're
That's what happened to Labour. Well, we also urge the federal government to look at it from the standpoint of the needs of the Nigerian worker, and perhaps be accountable and provide a breakdown of what 62,000 naira can do, maybe for even a family of 3, father, mother, and a child, and see what the mathematics adds up to. But Kayode, that's where we're starting from exactly. With Dr. Fabian Onunaku being our first commentator this morning, who says, cancel former governors' retirement benefits like Abia State. If you do this, plug other corruption leakages, including inflated and ghost contracts, and reduce the cost of governance, the states will have more than enough money to pay the minimum wage. The former governors are milking the states dry, even when they are no longer in office. Remove those outrageous benefits.
There you go. So this is at the heart of this is the NLC telling governors to cut the cost of governance and minimize corruption to enable them pay above 60,000 now. We understand that they are offering below that. And this next user, Ahmed Salami, that's Ahmed_Oris, says, allow states to decide their minimum wage. Their allocation is not the same. You can't force 60,000 naira on all the states, and some states are yet to fulfill the 30,000 naira minimum wage. Let's do this. If you're in a state or one of those states not paying 30,000 naira minimum wage just yet, let us know. There was a list that was put out earlier last year, budget and done something, but some of the states were coming and saying, no, we pay, we're not part of that group. But the minister says some states, as Minister for Labour says, some states are not able to pay 30,000 naira. So if you're in one of those states, send us a message, #CCTV Morning Brief, or do that on WhatsApp.
Now, this next one is from John Cletus, who says, I thought Labour is going for 250K, that's 250,000. Why say states can pay 60K? The question I need an answer to, I believe, is, can states pay the amount that Labour is pushing the federal government to sign as minimum wage, like 250K? Well, Labour is saying that the federal government, that states can pay a minimum wage above 60,000 naira. They're not particularly saying that they can pay 62,000 naira, and they're saying that the state should plug all the leakages and deal with corruption, and then they'll be able to pay a minimum wage above 60,000 naira, not the 62,000 naira where they are right now.
So fair enough, the conversation is still ongoing. States are saying, what about our ability to pay? I think last Bukola, there might be a need for recapitalization of states, just as we're seeing with the banks.
Just as you proposed on Friday.
Maybe that might be an option, but take a look at another angle to this conversation, and that's from Father Mbaka saying that senators and reps should also earn 62,000 naira. The first user on this one, that's Relad Nant Tweet, says the poor workers deserve decent living like any other politician in Nigeria. A lot of people are in dire situation, and many families cannot eat three square meals in a day, I should say. So this person is supporting that call by Father Mbaka. It will actually be interesting to see how the lawmakers respond to this 62,000 naira.
Maybe it will be based on ranking, the lowest rankings.
Okay.
Don't go there.
So there will be levels
of 6.
Okay.
Let's not go there. This next one is from Dr. Adejari Ladibolu, who says, what a brilliant, wonderful, and beautiful suggestion. I really concur with Father Mbaka's opinion on minimum wage. Let everybody be paid based on minimum wage, education certificate, and years of service as stipulated in the civil service rules. Let's harmonize, I believe, public service regulations. Yes.
So I must link on, that's the next user, pushes this further a bit, and it's not just for lawmakers. This user says, for the upteenth time, so apparently this user has been talking about this for a while, if that's Tinubu, Shatima, FEC members, as ministers, NAS members, heads of federal MDAs, state governors, and LGA chairmen cannot agree to start collecting 62,000 naira as their new monthly salaries without any allowances attached, then it's also unacceptable for the Nigerian workers. So this is a minimum wage, and this is not even to waiting to add supporting or against it. So there's wage that is decided by the Wages Commission, Salaries and Wages Commission. So these are leveled. So we need to then go back into that one and look through it. But the point being made here, I think, is taken.
Absolutely. And, the Constitution, if we borrow from our conversation yesterday on the news at 10, prescribes a reasonable minimum wage. So what's the reasonability that has been attached to the ongoing negotiations, particularly if you look at the piecemeal additions to the offer by the government? But this last view from GB Master says, even the president and the governor should earn this minimum wage.
Okay, so let us know what you think. Hashtag CTV Morning Brief, or you can do that on WhatsApp. You saw the number from time to time. Let's turn our attention to another conversation, and this concerns the regional government thingy, right? A man who had come up with a bill, or at least had drafted a bill for regional government, recently had talked about, how about we go back to it since we're going back to the national anthem. And now we understand that he's since said that he will be sending that bill to the president, and that is where we go to next. So that conversation isn't going anywhere. And the first user, Olixa305, saying that if President Tinubu grants regional law, then Nigeria will be at a great pace of development, and Tinubu will be the greatest president of all time.
Yeah, well, if there's a consensus on that yardstick to measure who the greatest president would be, if not, then the jury continues to be out there. This one is from Matthias Chaya, who says, sign it and let us move on. It is about time. Maybe it will work better than the current system because it failed. Give it the same urgency you gave the national anthem. Would it solve Nigeria's problems? Would it be the silver bullets that would shore up our revenue and ensure equitable distribution of resources such that, Nigerian government can offer its people, amid this ongoing negotiation, a fair living wage of maybe 200,000 naira? Well, it will now rely on the creativity of, the elected and appointed public office holders.
So let's see, Dr. Akin Fakwonda is a man. He said he's sending it to the president, so we'll see how that goes. But let's talk sports before we go. It was a busy weekend, not just for the Super Eagles, but for the NPFL. And it was beautiful to see the Nnamdi Azikiwe Stadium packed full. But the other side of it, of course, is the fact that fans invaded the pitch and the match was abandoned after a late penalty call. But I think it should not overshadow the fact that Nigerians trooped out to watch a local match in their tens of thousands. I mean, you should see that beautiful sight. But take a look at what this user says on this one, saying that all players that tagged the walkout should be suspended.
Staged? Shouldn't that be staged?
I think staged, yeah, that's more appropriate. Thank you, Bukola. They should be suspended and sanctioned by the NFF. The club should have their points deducted. This is, you see what the user said there. Yeah. Bukola, you have the next one.
I do, Kayode, and it's from Stephen the Magnificent, who says, this is wrong. Even as an Aimba fan, this is totally unacceptable from both players and fans of the team. It is unprofessional to contest a decision against you by walking out of the pitch, thereby inciting the fans. NPFL is still behind, and Aimba has just put it in bad light. I agree, there should be some discipline, you know. All teams should be able to play by the rules. If not, we won't have any competition and won't have anything to rejoice. And indeed, Kayode, you said it was a good thing to see that Nigerians trooped out in numbers, you know, to support their own local leagues. And that's what we've been talking about for ages, about developing our own local football. Absolutely. And to see it truncated by, you know, such an event is really, really sad.
So we'll be getting into that. If I will have someone who was live on scene yesterday joining us on the show to walk through what exactly happened. But as you said, this should not dampen the spirits of Nigerians. Let's keep supporting our local league. The next one on this particular one, it's a big one, absolutely. It says, this is why we'll never take Nigerian league seriously. Well, I don't think the fans yesterday share that sentiment with you, because trooping out en masse means they're actually taking the league seriously. But goes on to say that why this attitude's from fans. But let's put the context right. So there are rules of the game which must be adhered to, absolutely. But there's also the emotions. So this was an away team, Aimba, and this match was potential title decider. Okay, the winner of this match will most likely win the NPFL. So there was a late penalty call. The home side, Enugu Rangers, right there in Nnamdi Azikiwe Stadium. You know, last minute they got the call, and it was a bit controversial because some were saying, should this have been a penalty? Should it have been just play on? But the referee made a decision, and then we saw what happened. So there's the emotion of the game. But I think this is where we'll anchor for now. Okay, would hold our horses and wait for when it's time to have that conversation. But keep your comments coming in. Quite a number of talking points. I want to hear from you. Hashtag CTV Morning Brief. If you're on YouTube, drop those comments as well. We'll take them as much as we can. But we'll take a moment now. And when we return, we're starting off with a big one. Bukola, what is it?
It will be the minimum wage negotiation. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
there's some sort of an uneasy calm in the polity. The reason is because Labour had given the federal government 5 days to make up their mind as to how much they'll be paid. And given what happened last week or last weekend on Friday, nobody knows what is going to happen because the federal government says, from 60,000, we can add 2,000 extra, 62,000. Labour is saying, we don't accept that. We need at least 250,000. So where do we go from here? What is Labour up to? What the governors have also come out to say, even the 60,000 you're talking about, we can afford to pay is not sustainable. Some of us may have to borrow to pay salaries. So it's almost like a quagmire. We've been joined in the program to explore this conversation by Hajj Udemezue, is an economist and the CEO of Flame Academy and Consulting Limited. He joins us via Zoom. Mr. Udemezue, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. It's always my pleasure to join your program, and I'm sending greetings here from the city on 1,000 hills, Kigali in Rwanda. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, how do you characterize what is playing out? Cul-de-sac, catch-22 situation, a quagmire. How do you characterize this?
All of that and even more. It is very sad that we have to always quarrel, after several years, to be able to get some little increase in the so-called minimum wage. And when you look at the whole thing, the way it's playing out, you find that the problem remains bad and insincere leadership. Nigeria still needs to have leaders who can run Nigeria as a profitable enterprise, who must focus on the right things, to incentivize and to reward, so that we'll get the kind of results that we need as a country. In the business world, what you reward is what gets done. If you value the work that the public sector people, and indeed every other worker in Nigeria, whether in agriculture or in a hospital or in a school or in any other enterprise, if you value what they do, then you should focus on how to incentivize and reward their work. And that way, we get better productivity in public and even informal and private sector businesses or agencies. But you know what? We don't, look at that. But what do we incentivize in Nigeria? We incentivize politics to, a very extreme level. A nation that is very broke and poor has not considered coming down our fiscal cliff. If you look at what Nigeria pays legislators in all the states, even those states that argue that they cannot afford 60,000, can we find out? Can we even get, some consultants or people to find out the amount of allowances that we pay these legislators? Somebody just goes for an election and comes out lucky to be a legislator, and over a month or two, he becomes a millionaire or a billionaire. Somebody who, didn't even go to secondary school, for example, because that's the minimum. I mean, a secondary school graduate who goes for, a state assembly, comes up and you get all kinds of allowances, dressing allowance, wardrobe allowance, car maintenance allowance, even you can monthly allowances that run into tens of millions for just politics. So because of that, what do you find? Nigeria has incentivized horrible politics. Today, people now kill. They do all manner of things to become a politician, whether at the local government level or state level, to become a commissioner, to become an special advisor, to special. Just find your way into the political corridor, and you are made. Meanwhile, the technocrats who are doing the job, who are ensuring that the government affairs are being well run, that all the ministries and agencies of government are properly doing their work to direct the economy in the right way, are not rewarded for the work that they do. What do you now find? Extreme low productivity, extreme hunger by these workers, side hustles by these workers, corruption everywhere. People are doing the work they are not committed to. Every public worker today must have to do something different to be able to sustain his own personal life and the life of his family. So we don't need all this struggle. If we have good leadership in Nigeria, we don't need this alota continua NLC problem to be able to, review our wages to these workers. So it's wickedness, if you ask me, if we continue to have this argument. Because the government does not want to cut down our bad behavior, we don't want to adjust how much we spend. You hear that in a budget, somebody spends with 1 billion to build a BQ or a small quarters for a vice president of a company. You hear that to maintain the IT infrastructure for a person in Asoro, you are spending 500 billion. Such frivolities and wicked spendings. So, and you see that in every state of this country, and federal budget, what you can buy with 1 naira in Nigeria today is bought with 1 million naira in our budget. Whether it's Enugu State or Sokoto State or whether it's Ekiti State, everywhere in Nigeria, it's organized crime. We need a president of the mold of a business mogul, somebody who has run business enterprise, who can sit down with all stakeholders and say, guys, let's be realistic here. Nigeria, by the way, is about...
You may have to, tamper your language a little bit because there may be insufficient evidence to prove what you describe as organized crime. But you talked about the struggle, which is non-negotiable at this time amid the negotiations that would get government and Labour to a destination, which would be what would be agreeable. But to that, Labour is saying that if the governors check corruption and be more prudent in spending, they can pay a minimum wage above 60,000 naira. But, the subnationals have also said that the realities of increased federal allocation that everybody is quoting also presents a challenge because the exchange rate has also seen an increase in every other price of commodity that they also subscribe to in terms of, funding infrastructure and other aspects of development. So the question would be at this point that how can the governors, be more accountable, draw up a balance sheet that would accommodate a minimum wage higher above 60,000 naira in the light of increased federal allocation?
Okay, so the point I'm making here is that we need to have governors and leaders who must sit down and look at the size of the workers in their states. How many people do we have after we remove all the ghost workers and all the padded list of employees? We're in this country together. And when I say things I say here, I say them with conviction. I have had to engage legislators and people who even on their own tell me how horrible they feel approving some budgets, and you do nothing about it. We see some of those things play out on television, but let me not go there. The point I'm making is that our leaders, our governors, our legislators have to be honest with us as a nation. Can we sit down and work out how many workers can we afford in the ministry? There's no point having 5 workers in a ministry or in a department where none of them is committed to the work. Can we scale down and pay? If we're paying 2 or 3 people, we pay them well. So if governors can sit down and find out what's our wage bill in a month and what can we afford to be able to pay people decent salaries to get them committed to the work they do. That's why I say governors must work as business people. Can we afford what we're paying right now? Are there places we can cut down our expenses to be able to make up here? That's how a businessman runs his business. Are we overspending in some areas, in some allowances, throwing parties? In our travel expenses, a governor is traveling and you have a retinue of 8 going with him. You have an assistant to the governor, you call him senior special assistant, you have a junior assistant to the senior special assistant, you have other aides to the assistant, and all of those kind of packages. We have not addressed that yet. So I'm hopefully waiting for the Oronsaya report to be also considered to scale down some agencies that are multiplying or duplicating duties. If we do this, then we look at, okay, our state, how much do we earn from Abuja, the federal allocation, the FAC allocation? And beyond that, what can we do in our state to bring about increased productivity, to explore the resources, human and material resources that we have in our state, to make money in internal generated revenue and other ways to create productivity in the state. Because of the structure of the country, governors don't feel accountable to raise revenue for running of their state. We are comfortable waiting for every month to go to Abuja and collect whatever we are being given by the FAC allocation committee. So that's where the issue is. If you look at how much are we paying our political class, how much are we carrying in that portfolio? How many politicians do we need to run our government in our state? Do we need all the aids? Right. And for the state legislators, how much allowances are we paying them? Is it fair compared to those who are doing the work in the ministries? That's the question I'm asking. So it's about corruption, it's about poor management skills, and it's about not being sincere with ourselves. These states that cry that we cannot pay 60,000, look at the government security votes. Have they complained that, oh, security votes are too much? Constituency project money to legislators that is too much. Have we complained about those ones? We only bring up our complaints when it comes to saying how much do we pay workers. Okay. That's the problem.
So part of the debate, really, and I don't know how close we are to resolving all of these issues, because it looks like the more you try to resolve, the more the issues keep coming, and we wait to see what Labour will do. But part of the debate has been, if you have for the private sector, employers saying, well, this is how much I can pay based on what is coming in, right? So can't governors also hide behind that argument and say, well, based on the allocation we're getting, which is not the same, by the way, what state A is getting is not what state B is getting. Some states even get derivation and all of that. So they're saying, why can't we also say that? After all, it's our company of sorts, just as you see businesses, we see this as a state. So that's how much we're willing to pay. That's on the one hand. On the other hand is people now saying, no, that doesn't make sense. Fine, if you're not able to pay, that means you're not viable. So let's have some sort of recapitalization exercise for states. We've talked about that on this show for quite some time now. The same way we do with banks, maybe we should recapitalize the state. So we draw the operating license of states that are not viable, or downgrade them to a lesser tier. Maybe some states should be local governments, not states. Or merge them with another viable state that can better handle them. What is your take on this?
I think this is merely a theoretical argument. How do you capitalize a state? Do they issue shares and get people to buy into the state and become stakeholders in that state? Or, what do they do? Do they go to issue a state bond and raise more funds, loans that they cannot pay? They don't have resources and activities to be able to raise money and pay those debts. And when you talk about that, what are the constitutional procedures you require to merge states or to defund the state and say you're no longer viable? So we've met with somebody. So that's going to, going to be.
So the background, pardon me, the background to this is the basic, and I know it is loose, but it's just a sense to make states know that if you're not performing, then something will be done. The basic role of a government is to provide welfare and security. So if a state is failing in that simple and primary role of providing welfare, they call it minimum wage. It's not even a living wage yet. So that is a background to this. If a state is not able to provide welfare, does that state or does that government have any business in being a government or a state in this case?
Of course, that calls to question the issue of whether our states are actually viable to stand on their own. That question has been there over the years. We are creating these states based on political considerations only. We have not looked at business or enterprise consideration of whether the states are viable or not. And that's a major concern in this country. And if you want to go into that, you have to go into other major issues in fiscal restructuring, in national rejigging, whether we're going to run a regional government, or because, this is only about minimum wage. You have to consider if the states have to pay for their policing, for their own security, and other, services that are today handled by federal government. If we put them down to the state, even the issues around the infrastructure, road constructions, electricity and so on, if we get all of that off federal government and put it to the state, can these states even survive? Clearly no, when they cannot pay minimum wage. So in that sense, the argument is right that our states are not viable. What do we do about that? Do we need to sit governors down and teach them how to run businesses? And in all of these states, you will see one result or the other that have been abandoned because we found oil. In some states, you see groundnuts and other grains. In some states, you see a lot of plantain and other vegetables and so on. In many states, you see solid minerals, gold, bauxite, tin, and so on. Nobody talks about these things. In many states, you see a lot of professors, academics, services that we can sell to other countries, we can export and make dollars. All Nigerian states are actually viable, if you ask me. In terms of gift of nature, our lands are all arable. We have all kinds of mineral, blessings of God in terms of oil, even gold, diamond, bauxite, grains, all kinds of vegetables. Why are we not focusing on non-oil export? Why are these states not being taught entrepreneurship to harness what they find in their state and make themselves viable? Their viability is only measured, based on fact allocation versus their humongous expenses, political activities, and so on today. And that's why that viability is upheld. But please trust me, if you look at every state and what they can explore on their own and give account of those things, with their corruption, every state in Nigeria, I believe, can be viable. That's the issue.
All right.
So this argument, keeps coming up. And if you look at 1981, when the law first came out, for example, minimum wage then was about 125 naira, per month, and based on 1 naira to 61 cent, conversion rate, from what I researched, it was 1 naira to $0.61 then. Nigerian workers were earning $204 then, and progressively from. They have become poorer and poorer and poorer, even with inflation getting higher and higher. No Nigerian worker can live, no individual in Nigeria can live under the minimum wage of today and not be termed to be extremely poor or even multidimensionally poor.
All right,
because when you talk about...
All right, Mr. Hajj, if I may button, let's play with a bit of numbers because some of the things about insolvency, recapitalization, possible merger, maybe in the long term. But we have a situation where there's a tripod situation here where everyone is grandstanding. Labour is grandstanding on the amount. The federal government has just proposed a little beyond what they promised, say we're going to add. It looks like a bit of grandstanding. The governors have come out to say we cannot pay. So let's look at data and see where we can begin to reconcile this situation because we're in a bit of a quagmire. If you look at budget state of states data of 2022, you realize that, as we've always quoted, 70% of the states depend, at least 50% of their resources come from the federal allocation, at least that level of dependency. And if you look critically at the IGR, some states in 2022, their IGR was low as 6 billion naira. I'm talking about Zamfara State. In fact, there are 3 states that were less than 10 billion. Zamfara, I think Taraba, Yobe, and one other state. Less than 10 billion in IGR. So imagine if there was no fact, they will be insolvent. So looking at this reality and given the position of Labour, how should Labour now approach this state governor? Should we be talking of unique minimum wage or uniform minimum wage realistically?
Actually, if you have to be fair to these states, I believe that Nigerian states should be allowed to calculate and agree on the amount of wage they can pay to their staff. Just like they also have the right to decide the number of workers they can afford to carry. Nobody must force a state to employ 20 staff, for example, in their Ministry of Agriculture, if they can afford to only pay 4 or 5 people. They can employ people they can pay and then find a way to governance other services. If you are producing only 6 billion, why do you want to carry the number of staff, that a company or a state producing 100 billion carries? So you scale down your expenses in terms of your revenue. In every business, whether a national business or agency, you must look at your revenue versus your expenses. And once they cannot add up, you either find a way to boost your revenue by producing more goods and services, exploring what you have in your state, or you scale down your expenses. This is simple economics. So the governors must sit as the chief executive officers of their state and decide what they can afford. So to that extent, this should be a statewide issue. By the way, in economic policy, incomes policy is no more popular anywhere in the world. It's only in Nigeria that we discuss this. You can give a guide to say, why don't you pay this? But income policy is no more popular. Everywhere in the world, governments apply basically fiscal policy and the monetary policy to drive the economy towards the direction they want it to be. But here we are in Nigeria, still trying to, because if the market is vibrant and the economy creates jobs, this agreement cannot happen. If I go to a state work and you're paying me 30,000 minimum wage, and I have a company or an entrepreneur who can pay me 60,000 or 50,000 and other allowances and make my life better, I will go there. It's simple economics. So in Nigeria, we have a major issue of efficient allocation of human and other resources. So that's why we talk about high unemployment. If we have a country like, Luxembourg and so on, where unemployment is maybe around 1-2%, this agreement cannot occur. If I apply for a job in a state, parastatal or agency, and I find that they're paying me, let's say, 60,000 a month, and somebody else is calling me into a computer business or a farm settlement and is offering me 80,000, why would I be making this agreement? I quickly resign from government and go to where I may be rewarded for my work, and where I will also be vibrant to learn new skills and do things. So we're in this web or crisis because of high level of unemployment in Nigeria.
And that uniqueness, from what you're saying, suggests there could be some migration from states that are paying less to states that are paying more. I'd like to research. I'd like to take you up on your earlier commentary about the viability of states and why states should be more creative in internally generating in shoring up their IDR. Speaking of which, there are companies in the country, that are that their net worth is in the realm of trillions, and these are managed also by individuals. So help us understand why it is that states cannot be creative enough, if the comparison can be applied to a manager of men and resources in the same capacity, maybe in dealing with more men and more resources, but in the same capacity of a manager of resources, why they cannot, increase the fortunes of their state. Is it because we're electing, citizens are electing the wrong leaders, or what exactly is the challenge?
Every nation or every society gets the kind of leaders they deserve. All over Africa, and particularly Nigeria in this case, the electoral process needs to be very mindful of what we promote. Are we promoting money-backed politics? You've got the money, you've got the position, you've got the votes. Or whether you get the vote or not, we make you a governor. What you can pay or bribe one person or the other. I'm being careful in choosing my words here. But the point in summary is that our electoral process does not produce the best we have in Nigeria. There are men and women, their names are all over the place, who have run businesses successfully. Either they have run banks successfully, they have run oil and gas companies, they have run telecom businesses, they have run their own personal enterprise, they have run schools, they have run hospitals, they are all over the place. Nigeria is a country that is not lacking in terms of human capacity. Everywhere around the world, in America, Nigerians are medical directors of very sensitive medical systems. Everywhere in Europe, you find Nigerians doing great things. In engineering, in education, professors, everywhere. How come our electoral process is not bringing these guys up to run our states? Trust me, if our electoral dynamics change, whereby we bring up the right persons in this country and in this continent called Africa, there's no continent in the world that compares to Africa. Because Africa currently produces more than 30% of the world's natural resources, raw materials for productivity. But our problem remains our political system. What you may call a tendency towards despotism and high-level corruption in the electoral process. I can't say more than this. So if you don't have a system that throws out your best, you have a system that throws out your worst, what do you expect? How can you expect a governor to give what he does not have? A governor that has, barely done no business. Right from when he became an undergraduate and so on, he was groomed and brought into the state to take over because his father was a former governor, a former permanent secretary in the state, or in the political class. So it's an elitism problem that we have in this country. Because my father or my grandfather or great-grandfather, owned Nigeria, our family must continue to own Nigeria. Whether I'm competent or not, I will become your governor, whether you like it or not, in a state where you have better brains that can explore resources in that state and make that
deep
state
issues. And as you said, sometimes people just get the leaders they deserve. But I don't want to say we're staring down the barrel of a gun right now, looking at what will happen this week. Do you think it's justified for Labour to still go on strike with this proposal of 62,000 from federal government and less than 60, as we hear from the state, saying that I think it's far from what they envisaged. They've brought theirs to 250. So will it still be right for Labour to go ahead with a strike, seeing what happened last week when Labour literally shut down the nation? What would you be proposing? It's crunch time now, Mr. Demezwe. We're winding down.
Sometimes, without putting your foot down or your feet down, you may not achieve, some purpose in life. There are crises and conflicts you must avoid or accommodate or compromise, and there are times you must have to fight. It looks like without a fight in Nigeria, Labour never gets any increase in minimum wage. If you look at the history over the years, it was done 1981, then 1991, 1999, or 2000, every 10 years. But inflation keeps going up every year. So Labour looks like the only way they can get something out of this government is to strike. So if they have to strike, so be it. That's my view. Because this government does not listen to Labour issues until they strike. But then when it comes to allowances, furniture allowance, dressing allowance, and so on for politicians, we don't hear anything when these things are done. And trust me, they are done regularly enough to promote the kind of thing that we deserve in this country, bad politics.
We must thank you, Mr. Hajj Demezwe, on this particular one, because there's a lot of conversation. If you look at the numbers, which I like to look at, there's also the narrative of the back-breaking debt burden on these states, and some will still want to borrow. And so the numbers don't really pan out well, but we hope that both Labour and the federal government will find a place to just reconcile these numbers so that we don't experience what we experienced last week, Monday, and the economy grounded at the end of the day. Hajj Demezwe is an economist and the CEO of Flame Academy and Consulting Limited. Thank you so much for weighing in on this particular issue of the dispute between organized labor and government. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. God bless you all.
As we say, it's an uneasy calm. Everybody is watching what will happen from today to the rest of the week, whether Labour will again go on strike. We hope it doesn't happen, but let's hope for the very best. But when we come back after this break, we'll switch gears. We're going to talk football. If you love football, it's a good time to be on the show. Join us again.
First half, I felt we should have done a little bit better or enter the game a little bit quicker. It didn't happen, so we considered that goal. But I think the players reacted so well in the second half, and it's not the best result that we wanted, but a draw is better than losing. We'll get our heads up and see how we can win the next match. Today is a day where we needed that win, and we got to draw. So not happy about the point, but the performance in the second half was really outstanding.
Well, it was a busy weekend, clearly, for football in Nigeria. And it looks like it's going to be another busy day for us. And we have joining us to walk through some of those major events. Some of them were exciting moments, some maybe below par. And then there's a big day today. Is Wale Adigun, sports journalist, is right here with us in our Lagos studio. Good morning, Wale. Welcome to the morning.
Good morning. It's great to be back here again.
Yeah, so last time we had a conversation was Nations Cup.
Yeah, it was AFCON.
Yeah, we were this close. We had a strong 2-1. It's good to see you, Wale.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Not the first class. A strong 2-1 in that AFCON. Exactly. But, before we talk about today's match and Friday's match, the World Cup qualifiers, I want us to talk about what we saw play out during the Oriental Derby yesterday between Enugu Rangers and Eyimba. Enugu Rangers home side, Eyimba visiting the stands filled to the brim. I understand over 20,000 fans watching that game. Perhaps one of the biggest attendance for NPFL match. But then, dying minutes, something happened and everything just yam pepe scatter, as Nigerians will say. You are a sports person. You have always talked about how we need to encourage NPFL.
Yeah.
And then I know officiating has also been an issue. What was your interpretation of what played out yesterday?
Yeah, it was a case of the highs and the lows, because, I mean, the game lived up to its pre-match hype. Both governments were involved. Both governors were involved, because this was a game that also was going to decide the title. Because Rangers went into the game on 61 points, Eyimba went on 59 with 3 games to go. Yeah. And whoever won that game will have had, the upper hand in going to win the title. And it all started well. I mean, the pictures we got before the game were pictures that told you about how big the NPFL can be, the potentials it's got. It was filled to the brim. But whilst it was filled to the brim, you got a feeling that they got overjoyed. The hype got to their head and crowd control was missing, because at the point in time, the fans were spilling onto the tracks. The cathedral has got a track before the pitch. And the moment you could see fans start watching the football game standing on the tracks because the stands were filled up, you knew it was going to be volatile. And
that's even before the controversial.
And this was before the invasion or whatever happened. And game started, real good pace. Rangers looked like the better side at the post, and John Ojele, that's the referee for the game, adds on 8 minutes. Game still goalless, by the way, and 8 minutes goes into 101 minutes, and yeah, what's a penalty? And all hell let loose. And the fans, the Eyimba fans, I understand, invade the pitch in protest of that decision. It looked like a good penalty. This game was on television, by the way. Yeah, it was on cable television. It looked like a penalty, but they protested that, hey, you awarded 8 minutes, and we're already in the 107th minute or thereabout. And all hell is let loose, and game is about to restart. And I understand that the chairman of Eyimba, that's Kanu Wankwo, instructed his players not to continue the game. And that game is abandoned. And right now, we will be waiting on the NPFL to make a decision, very much important, make a decision by today or tomorrow. Do Eyimba get their 3 points stripped off? Do both of them restart the game? Is the penalty still standing? We don't know yet. But like I said, the eyes of the game was seeing how fans could take in a game of this magnitude and come all out, but the lows was what we saw. But I will choose to stay with the highs, though.
So let's talk about, I saw that clip. It felt like he was smartly wrestled down. If you look at the video, in your view, was that a penalty? Irrespective of what time it is, because the argument is you extended the time too much and now you awarded a penalty. So what should be the merit of the argument? Was it a penalty? Does it matter if it was beyond the time? Those are the things I'm sure they're going to be looking at in the boardroom.
I thought it was a penalty. And regarding the time, I always tell people, the referee is the arbiter of the time. The referee ends the game when it deems it fit, because it's the arbiter of the time. And you cannot take away the time-wasting antics of the opposition. And the referee takes all of this into cognizance. And if the game goes into 120 minutes, the referee decides it. All the referee has to do is go after the game in your match report, justify why you've added this time. So I had no problems with John Ojele adding those minutes, so I could justify it after the game. But I thought it was a stonewall penalty. Yeah.
But there are rules guiding the NPFL, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I just checked one, and it says that all players shall comply with the rules, not only in letter but also in spirit. So looking at what has transpired now at the stadium yesterday, or was it on Friday, who should we be looking to invoke the rules such that there'll be discipline, and those who should get to be disciplined will be disciplined for this conduct?
The interesting thing here is everyone is to blame. Rangers, Eyimba, even the NPFL. This guy's running the league in Abidjan with the Super Eagles. This is the biggest game of the season. They should be here, because if the NPFL knew the magnitude of this game, then I'm sure that there will be a lot of crowd control measures. What you see here is a lack of crowd control measures. That is what you're seeing here. Rangers are also complicit here because they didn't provide enough stewards. I saw some stewards, but that was not enough. Aimba also because you could also see that their players were instigating their fans to come do what they've done here. So everyone has to take a share of the blame.
Everyone should be fined.
Everyone, even the NPFL, are not left out of what we've seen here, which is really an embarrassment on Nigerian football. We just went back to the Stone Age. But I tell people, things like this also happen in European football. Last season, a Turkish club owner left the stands, came onto the pitch, and punched the referee in the face. This is the Turkish league where Jose Mourinho is going to be manager.
Oh dear. You probably didn't get the memo that this is football and this is not boxing. So
this is not as if it's peculiar to Nigeria football. No, we've also seen some great moments this season in the NPFL.
Absolutely. So as you said, stay with the highs, but ensure that the lows are appropriately dealt with. But quite weighty allegation to say that the chairman of a club was one that instructed them to abandon the match. I mean, that's unheard of.
Oh, that's really a shame, and it's always a constant theme of Nigerian football, and it's not a theme that gets into the limelight. How fans, our players, administrators instigate their fans against referees, and it has to stop, because these fans are very, very emotionally volatile. Whatever you tell them to do, it has to really stop. And players do this a lot, administrators do this a lot when things don't go their way.
Right. So sorry, what do we do to ensure that people abide by the rule? I'll give you an example. Even in election, even if you feel someone rigged the election, as long as INEC has made that call, it is final.
Yep.
In courts, in our jurisprudence, if a case is against you, as long, whether that case makes sense, the judgment makes sense, it doesn't make sense, you will abide by that judgment. If it's appealable, or if it's to be set aside, you can set aside. That, I think, is supposed to be. Whether the referee was right in the call or was wrong in the call, what does it take to make people respect the decision? And then the referee will be penalized later, because that's the crux of the matter here.
And most importantly, respect the spirit of the game. It is very important. A perfect case study, I can't remember her name, she's an athlete, and she ran a race. But in that race, she couldn't complete. I think she had an issue with the race, and she still completed the race. Her coach told her, complete this race. And after they made an appeal, they awarded her a medal because of the fact that she completed the race. So in the spirit of the game, games like this should end. You know, this game was on a cable platform. Africa saw this game. And how do we explain this? So I think that our players, our administrators also need to be reorientated. They need to be educated and re-educated. They need to add more knowledge, because things like this has got the potential of just dragging back. This league was called the fastest rising league in Africa.
Right.
This is not rising.
Okay. We still hope you're buying your tickets, but we have 3 matches left. So still buy your tickets. Okay, let's fill those stands and support our football. Maybe this is even bad publicity that is still good publicity. But let's talk about the other crucial match for the Super Eagles now. What we saw on Friday, I don't know, we knew that South Africa was coming with anger, as they say, because we saw what played out during the AFCON and how we just snatched it off. So we knew they were coming to have their own pound of flesh. But we thought, we're home. We have Finidi George, maybe some pressure. We have our players. I mean, this guy was back from injury, the Bayer Leverkusen player. Victor Boniface, all of the hype, all of our players doing well in the league and even European football. But we saw the 1-1 scoreline. In fact, at some point, I stopped watching the match. For my health's sake, obviously, because I'm like, I can't deal with this. So I stopped watching the match. But we have another decider today. So let's sort of juxtapose. What didn't we do right on Friday? What must we do right today?
I thought on Friday we didn't start well. Most likely a lack of preparation, which wasn't in tip-top shape. Remember that some players got caught up in the old Labour strike, couldn't make it down to Uyo in time. Looked like we lacked a bit of cohesion and chemistry, and that showed in the first half. We're sluggish. The manager also made some very head-scratching, decisions. Boniface dropped for Paul Onuachu, Fisaya Deli, Bashiru. I thought they were justified, especially Onuachu, who I thought had a good game, despite not scoring, missed a couple of chances as well. But we started sluggishly, but it was a proverbial game of two halves, because we came out all smoking in the second half, scored very early on, and I thought that we scored too early for us to be able to have gotten a winning goal. Right. We piled on the pressure, but couldn't get that winning goal. But defensively, we didn't look assured. You look at the first goals, Joanne scored.
They literally split out.
Yeah, exactly. And Benjamin Tanimu, that's the new guy, looked complicit in that, playing at right back. We also didn't have a natural left back. Maybe that also hurt us going forward. Bright Osai Samuel played in that position. But I think that we'll be better today against the Benin Republic. We just need to give that performance in the second half. I think Finidi also spoke about it. Most likely Victor Boniface is going to start today, I hear, because the fans gave him and the media gave him a lot of grief for not starting Nigeria's informed striker. And he explained it.
Because that's where I wanted to come to. Onuachu is not a natural starter. He's a substitute guy. So what was the rationale behind? We understand the place of giving somebody a chance, but it wasn't working up to 17 minutes and plus. And Boniface was seated there. This is a critical match. You look at Rwanda, you look at Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Benin Republic, and Nigeria, Super Eagles, is on the 5th on that table. And now we're going to be permutating, literally. Let this one lose so that we win. What is this?
We're so used to it, aren't we? Permutating. But what I was speaking to a senior colleague over the weekend, and he said, see, I told him, I don't think we're going to the World Cup in 2026. And he said, oh boy, he thinks that we are going to go there. But our margin for error is gone. We cannot make any more mistakes.
Ali, I bind up.
Yes, we cannot. To be very honest with you, I think today is make or break. You don't win today, forget being in USA, Mexico, and Canada.
The last match was make or break. We keep postponing this make or break. Literally, it doesn't make sense.
The reason is because nobody has run away with the group yet. South Africa haven't. Benin Republic. Guess who's top of the table? It's Lesotho. Lesotho are not going to play at the World Cup. Let's be very honest here.
Well, you may be shocked.
Let's be very honest here. I'm ready to wager on that. Well, let's do it. All due respect to Lesotho. All due respect.
But look at that. Sorry for look at that. Look at that table. My own is just. I know in football anything can happen. But when you look at that table and look at Lesotho, Rwanda, Zimbabwe, Benin, you should have said, Nigeria, we have gone. We have entered this World Cup since. Yeah, which is what we're trying to get, because now every match is a pressure game. Our mates are already securing 9 points. It's true.
And the sad thing is, Finidi has been put in the position of a deficit, because the first 2 games were played under his Oga. That's Jose Pesera. He was assistant then. And those 2 games, I thought the 2 games we should have won. Lesotho, which we drew, and Zimbabwe, which we also drew as well. You start the qualifier and you try to highlight your 3-pointers. Lesotho has to be there, home and away. Zimbabwe also has to be there, and we've dropped 2 points or 4 points in here, so we have to make up for it, and I hope that we can do that against Benin Republic. Finidi explained that the reason why Victor didn't come in was because while he was about to come in, Shemi Ajayi had a knock, and he had to take him off and replace him with a defensive-minded player, not to open up the team. So there's also a doubt on Shemi Ajayi to play today against Benin Republic. I think it should be fine. But Boniface starts up front today. I'm very much sure about that. But once again, I thought Onuachu had a decent game. Right. Yeah, Onuachu is a victim of the fact that he's a tall, lanky guy who doesn't run a lot, but his hold-up play on Friday was good. He won us a couple of fouls. He had a chance as well. In fact, he created the equalizer.
At the end of the day, the most important statistics is goals scored, not attempts, not efforts.
But it's the attempts that
should we begin to look at this deficit for Finidi George objectively because of the challenges of the players that were not available? For instance, Victor Osimhen, our valuable player, was not available. Or should we be looking at it critically as, perhaps his boss was a more competent coach than what we're seeing him put forward now?
See, I've got no excuse for anyone right now because our team is as talented. is the most talented in this group.
Exactly.
We've got the most quality players. South Africa came down to Nigeria with how many foreign-based players? Probably 1. They went to the AFCON with 95% players based in the PSL. We have our players playing in the creme de la creme of European football. Our players scored a hat-trick in the Europa League final. Ademola Lookman. That's World Cup material. So I've got no excuse for anyone, for the players, for the manager. If you are the Super Eagles manager, you should be qualified for every competition, irrespective of whoever is in your group, because we are one of the biggest footballing nations in the world. I know that Galadima said it way back in 2006 or 5 that the World Cup is not a birthright. But at this stage, I think that we didn't go to the last World Cup. That should be enough motivation to want to be in the next edition. If we miss out on this World Cup, this bunch of players will be in their 30s. They would never have a chance to do that. So they have to also, determine within themselves that we have to pull the chestnut out of the fire against Benin Republic, who also have a grudge against us. Remember, their coach, Gernot Rohr.
Yes, we're meeting Gernot Rohr.
We sacked him. And that guy is still aggrieved about that. I think we still owe him, in fact, because we have to, the FIFA are judged that we sacked him wrongfully and we have to keep on paying him. So he is aggrieved, and trust me, he's going to transmit that to the players who are they are very physical. They played a good game against Rwanda over the last week as well, 1-0, scored from a set piece. So we have to be very careful.
So should we be worried about the Benin Republic team?
Oh yeah, we should. Especially also we're playing in a venue where we had the AFCON Attic. We're playing in Côte d'Ivoire, the Felix Ofoe Boyne Stadium, which didn't give us good memories. So we have to be very, very... Well, objectively, I think it's advantage Nigeria, because Benin Republic cannot play at home. They have to play on a neutral ground because CAF didn't approve of their stadium. So that should be advantage Nigeria. So I think that we should be able to do that, get 3 points.
So is Coach Finidi George, is it the man? From what you saw on Friday, I know with this government, they say 1 year is too short to rate the government. So maybe you will also be saying one qualifier is too short to rate me, but is he our man?
Yeah, I mean, two things can be true, right? I think that it's too early to judge Finidi George, but I like when managers can transmit confidence not only to players, but even to the general public.
Did you see that on Friday?
Finidi doesn't do that. Even at his unveiling, I don't know, maybe that's his style. It's too cold. I mean, we're watching him before we came on air talk about how he didn't transmit confidence. And I like managers who can do that.
Did you see that in Joseph Peseiro?
No, I think Peseiro was a bit better than Finidi in terms of transmitting confidence. Yeah, he sounded more confident. Even when we were playing nonsense, he was still saying the right things, But maybe that's Finidi's style, which is not a problem for me. But is it the guy? He talks a good game. He says he wants to play like Man City. He wants his team to regain possession after 5-10 seconds of losing it. He wants his players to be fluid. And I don't think I've seen much of that. But the second half performance served as encouragement that, Alex Yobe was a beast in the second half. Right. Played some good stuff. Ademola Lookman also, I thought, was also very much good in the game. So if they can give us that second half performance, make it a total performance against Benin Republic.
Sorry, Jeffrey, have you observed that this is the usual style, this reticence in the first half and then the resurgence in the second half, and then we're now trying to recover? Why shouldn't we put that attacking spirit in the first half and in the second half and consolidate all of the games that are possible in both halves?
Yeah, you have to credit the South Africans. They're a good side. Yeah, they've got a good side. They've got a good manager who's won the AFCON before. That's Hugo Bruce. I think he did it with Cameroon. So South Africa also had no pushovers these days. They're a well-knit side, and I thought that we failed to understand them in the first half. And in the second half, the shackles were a bit off, and we played some good. But I agree with you. We need to start well off the blocks, hit the ground running. Get an early goal. Gone were the days when Super Eagles play any qualifier and that in the first 10 minutes we are always going to score. It became like a trademark for us that we scored the early goal. But these days we struggled and find a goal here and there. And another cause for worry is the fact that away from home, the Super Eagles are not really a big side in terms of results. So
my question is it unfortunate? This is a tricky question.
Okay.
Is it unfortunate that we have Finidi at this time? The reason I said so, this is not the time to say they played well. We tried. We're talking about qualifying for the World Cup. It's a make or miss situation. Mm-hmm. And now this is the time we're giving an indigenous coach this express chance. And then we got that result on Friday. Is this a good time for Finidi George?
Honestly, I don't think so. Yeah, like you said, it's a tricky question. Yeah. You take a job and you're already in a position of deficit. Your first 2 games ended in a draw. It's a World Cup qualifier. Remember, it's winner takes all. And I think Finidi would have loved to start the qualifier on his own, so you could fully judge him. And I understand the contract he has signed is get us to the World Cup and the AFCON, then we'll see what happens after that. They haven't given him a long-term contract. So the time is really bad. And he was an Aimba coach, having a good time, won the league last season, was also pushing them to defend the title as well. And when the Super Eagles come calling, you cannot reject it. You cannot reject it. And crucially, it is also a period where it looks like a last chance salon for a local manager to lead the Super Eagles. We've always talked about a foreign coach, but now the media, everybody now has what he wants, which is, a Nigerian coach. So it is very crucial that he succeeds, because if he doesn't succeed, trust me, making a case for a local coach to lead the Super Eagles is going to be very, very... There's still a lot of people who are still not convinced about Finidi. The jury is still out on him. So he needs to convince, he needs to do this not only for himself, but for other local coaches who still have aspirations of doing this. So it's very, very much important, but I'm not sure the timing is really right for Finidi.
So I'm going to go to a deeper question, right? And I think usually we look at the symptoms, which is obviously a testament of something deeper, which is like an illness. So they've always said that fundamentally we don't manage sports well as a nation. And you can point to a lot of things, how we manage facilities, for example, even the tiniest of facilities in local governments. For example, you can ask which local government has a tiny pitch for five-a-side, more of a big pitch. You hardly find that. That's not what you find in other climes. At the grassroots, you find some semblance of sporting facilities there. You can talk about the development of talents. Most of our talents were not developed here, or at least a good number of them. The countries responsible for developing them are the UKs and the rest. So talent development is also lacking. Remuneration is also a big deal. You hear they've not paid our match bonus. We've not gotten an allowance. In fact, we're still trying to pay Gennett Raw. You talked about that. So is it that this sport is not made for us? We're forcing ourselves on this sport, or what? Or is just what you find across board that is affecting our sports as well?
We are a talented country. We have talents. Massive talents as far as football is concerned, even in sports. We are massive, but we have a leadership deficit. We have an administrative deficit. I also think we have a structural deficit as well in terms of creating structure for grassroots. Germany, when they messed up in the Euros, in the early 2000s, they made a policy, and the policy was creating sporting structures. Even Gennett Raw was part of that policy making way back, and the policy was about creating sporting facilities about 10 kilometers from each other. And before you knew it, they regenerated and won the World Cup in, I think, 2014. We need policies like that, and we're lacking. And not even that we need policies like that, we even lack the willpower to carry out those policies. Look around Lagos. How many sporting facilities do you see? Look around Nigeria. How many football college of excellence do you have? You only probably have the one in Ikene. That's Beyond Limits Football Academy, who are doing a fantastic job over there in Ogun State. But trust me, if you have probably 10 of that in Nigeria, the future is bright for us, because structures like that help you harness the talent. It's a different thing to have the talent, but it's a different thing to harness the talent, to expose the talent. Look at those who went to the All-Africa Games. They came back and they still have not been paid what is due to them. So we love the game. We know the game. But it is very important that you also love the game back.
So let's come back to the match that is going to happen this evening, because some of us are tired of this permutation. We need these 3 points to be able to rest a bit. The pressure is too much.
Jeffrey, don't put your... Well, one of the life hacks is to not rely on sports for your happiness.
Football is a game of passion. It is passion that made people invade that pitch, not because they just want to be hooligans. They want to win. It's not as if one couple is entering their pocket, maybe apart from those who bet. But at the end of the day, just that pride, that bragging right, it makes us feel good. Not as if we share any money from what they earn or get. So what should we be looking at tactically? Because clinical finishing is quite important. Attempts has to be converted. From your own experience as a sports pundit, what should we be telling Finidi and our frontliners? Let's hope that Boniface starts today, and let's see what the NHR and the rest of them can do.
Start well, yeah. Start well. Get off the blocks, score early, convert your chances. Very much important. I also think that winning today, we also have to win well. It's good for the confidence of the manager and for the players, because once they're done with this series, they all go on break. Everybody gets on the beach because they've had a long season. Right now, even these qualifiers they are playing right now, their minds are not really there because they've had a long, grueling season. And after this game today, they are off to their various vacation destinations to go and blow off some steam.
Isn't that also a problem?
It's not really a problem. It's not really a problem because they are still in the zone. I mean, look at Vinicius Jr. won the Champions League, and just 2 days ago was playing for Brazil against Mexico. Assisting Hendrick, to win the game 3-2. So I think our players also have that mindset. They are still very much in the zone. Ademola Lookman is still baying for blood. Scored in the Europa League final, a hat-trick, scored in the Serie A again, and I thought he played decently well against South Africa as well. So I don't think that's a problem, but today Finidi has to tell them, you have to start really strong. You cannot afford a slow start, because Benin Republic are also a very, very decent side. From set pieces, we have to be very careful, and it's very important, don't concede first. If you concede first, Genotro, while he was our manager, one thing we knew him for, he didn't play beautiful football, but his team was strong, was rigid, was very, very, very structured and compact. And that's what he has put into that Beninois side. If they score first and they become compact, it becomes difficult and we start begging for a draw. And guess what? That becomes the 4th consecutive draw, and we'll be like the draw masters in that group. Exactly. So, and we can't afford that. Sometimes a loss is better than a draw. Benin Republic have lost 1, drawn 1, and won 1. They are top of the table, because you keep on drawing and you get a feeling that I'm still unbeaten. But no, you're going nowhere. It's a state of stasis. You're not moving forward, you're not going backward. So it's important that we start well, get a couple of goals, and back in maybe Boniface or Lookman to score today and get us all 3 points.
So as we begin to learn to manage our emotions, if we miss this, if we miss this opportunity yet again, that's another missed World Cup opportunity. What are you worried for our rankings on the global football team?
Yeah, I'm worried for much more. I'm worried for myself. I'm worried for my finance, because the World Cup is tied to my business as a journalist. I mean, we don't know that the ecosystem gets affected when Nigeria doesn't participate in these big competitions. We knew the media, the sports media, lost a lot of money in the last World Cup that Nigeria didn't attend.
I agree.
We're just a country that don't know the implication of this thing. We just move on. But there are implications to this. It affects businesses. It means that I won't be able to pitch to brands that I want to go cover the Super Eagles at the World Cup. So there's a lot of domino effect if we don't go to the World Cup. And that's why it's important that we go, even for the NFF. It affects our finances. There's a massive windfall that comes from FIFA. There's a massive windfall that comes from your sponsors and your partners, because you are the biggest soccer fiesta in the world. So I think it's important, but our rankings is going to suffer. We've started recovering because the AFCON boosted our rankings. I think we are now 27th in the world.
3rd in Africa.
3rd in Africa. We haven't been 27 in a very long time. Before, we fluctuate between 40, 38, 37, 38. Now we're about 27, 25. So the AFCON gave us a massive boost. But guess what? This World Cup qualifiers is hurting us now. Refusal to beat Lesotho, Zimbabwe, Bafana, who are a top side, is going to hurt the rankings. So we have to get back to winning ways, because remember, the rankings also will be crucial when the AFCON qualifiers or the AFCON itself comes around. So everything has an effect, and the Super Eagles, I'm begging them. Very much important.
Well, let's add our voice to your begging, and also beg them as well. So you see us winning this match, though?
Yeah, I think so. We'll do just enough.
All right.
Yeah, a 1-0. I think we'll do a 1-0. It will just be enough to get all 3 points and get us some breathing space.
So we have a few hours to that match.
5 p.m.
5 p.m. So we'll keep praying. But as we said, do not place, I wish I could say this in Yoruba, but let me just say it in English. Do not place your heart, as I say in Yoruba, on this match. Okay, just watch it as a fan. We know what happened during the AFCON, how a lot of people had issues regarding that. But Wale Adigun, I'd like to thank you so much.
Yes, great to be here. Great to be here. I think you probably have to stream the game once again. You can't watch it on local television.
There you go.
Which is another shame. The national team plays and Nigerians cannot watch it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's another conversation.
Oh, yeah.
For another day.
For another day.
We have to go now, but we wish the Super Eagles the very best, and thank Wale Adegunwu for joining us on this one. It would be nice to see you on the stands, maybe as a coach one of these days, so we can talk about you too. We'll take a moment now. When we return, I will talk about the labor side to this minimum wage. We just took a breather with this sport, but we're getting back to business of sorts, and we see what labor has in store for us this week. Stay with us on the Morning Brief.
Welcome back to the program. And yes, we know we're supposed to be cruising with Joe on this softer side of things, but we promise you we'll cruise with Joe very soon, later on in the week. But why not cruise with the NLC and organized labor, particularly amid this all-important conversation about ongoing negotiations on the new minimum wage, especially with what Jeffrey describes an uneasy calm this week about what Labour's next line of action would be following where we are now. Government offering 62,000 naira, and Labour has come down from 494, I believe, to 250,000 naira. Joining us to help us understand what perhaps Labour's next line of action will be this week is the Assistant General Secretary of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Mr. Chris Onyeka. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Onyeka, and for perhaps providing an aerial view of what's happening at the Labour houses. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me around this morning. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so perhaps where we would start would be what is what we see as perhaps the misunderstanding the Nigerians have about Labour's statement saying that state governors can pay a minimum wage above 60,000 naira. Some Nigerians are thinking that Labour is somehow conceding to 62,000 naira. First of all, help us clarify what Labour's position is on that.
Our position is very clear. It's just that a lot of people are not patient enough to follow the issues. We have never considered accepting 62,000 naira or any other wage that is below what we know is able to take Nigerian workers home. We would not negotiate a starvation wage, neither would we negotiate a reduction in the wages of Nigerian workers. We have never contemplated 100,000, talk less of 62,000. We have never contemplated that. We are still at 250,000. That is where we are. And that is what we consider enough concession to the government and the other social partners in this particular situation. Because we are not just driven by frivolity. We are driven by the realities of the marketplace, realities of the things that we buy every day. A bag of rice, gari, yam, and all of those. We are driven by that, and we understand what we feel all over the nation. What we did before coming to where we came to was as a result of scientific investigation. We conducted throughout the nation, all around the local governments and the state the states of the federation. We did all of those and came with the figure that we came up with. We have our first initial.
Well, it appears as if Mr. Onyeka has... Okay. Please unmute, Mr. Onyeka. Perhaps your hand touched the mute button unexpectedly. Mr. Onyeka, please unmute. Oh dear. We will surely get back to Mr. Onyeka. Perhaps... Mr. Onyeka, you're back with us now. So you were clarifying that Labour has not at any time conceded to 62,000 naira minimum wage. You can conclude your thoughts there before we come with the next question.
We have never considered that. Neither have we considered 100,000 naira. All those are speculations. from some individuals. And sometimes we see the hands of the government in trying to spread the propaganda in order to seek to discredit the leadership of the organized labor. But that is not true. Our figure is 250,000, and that is our base. That is where we are.
All right, Mr. Onyeka. So I'm happy you mentioned the fact that you did your analytics, more like a cost of living index across the country. And I saw that you came to that 615,000. I had a conversation with Mr. George where he broke it down. But in your analytics, did you also consider the level of buoyancy across states? Because we know that some states, in terms of revenue across board, it's abysmal, which is why they are raising concern. And governors have come with that grandstanding position that even the 60,000 naira that has been proposed by the federal government is unsustainable for them.
That is not the reality. The truth is that the governors can pay 250,000 naira minimum wage without any problem if they stop collecting their security votes, which they are not using for anything. For example, if they stop paying their past governors and deputy governors pension while they sit at the National Assembly, they will have more money to pay. If they reduce the cost of governance in their respective states, they will be able to pay. We have people who are also people from our own side, who are also in government at the state levels. And we have had these conversations all these years. The governors have to have a heart of humanity. They have to understand that the salaries of workers are the things that workers depend on to survive. And they will have to put themselves, they have to have empathy for Nigerian workers. Because if you do not pay workers well, they will not be able to live as human beings. You strip them of that thing that makes them human beings. And so, governors should realize that if they call down on their greed, if they call down on the West at the state levels, then they will have more money to pay workers. The state government treasuries are all awash with naira, given the hike in the price of PMS. They are awash with naira, and they cannot claim not to have naira. They have naira. I am conscious of using the fact naira. They are awash of naira in their coffers, and they should be humane enough to extend this to workers and pay them the 250,000 naira that we are demanding.
Well, comrade, the other part of the argument has been, one, the states do not get equal FAC allocations. In fact, some other states get extra on top, derivation and the rest. It's also been said that in other climes, you find that different states have different minimum wage threshold. Yes, there might be a federal threshold, but the states eventually either add, or if they can't pay as much as that, they find a way to negotiate based on their reality. So is that something you will support as well, having different minimum wage across states, one maybe based on the FAC allocation they get and what they have described as their ability to pay, or you just want a standard minimum wage?
My brother, the reality is this, that salaries across states are not the same. They are not the same. So the fact that you have these objective realities in all the states has already taken care of that. This is called a national minimum wage. It is not called a state wage or a regional wage. It's a national minimum wage. It is a base that Nigeria as a nation has sat down to say that there is no citizen of this nation that should live below this. That's why it's called a wage floor. And so it's a national issue. We as a people, as Nigerians, we have agreed that this is the basis. Now, state governors can now decide on their own to increase or pay whatever they like in some states that are paying higher. Edo State was paying higher. Lagos State was paying higher. River State were also paying higher. So you cannot find the same salary across all the states. No, that is not true. So the reality is that the objective realities in all the states have already taken care of this particular position, according to the fact that they receive from the federal government. But we are talking of a national minimum wage here, which is statutory, and which has to be complied with by every law-abiding Nigerian organization, including the state governors.
So, Mr. Onyeka, Perhaps it would be the right time for you to tell us what to expect this week. You know, as we saw last week, how Labour went on strike, and indeed the national grid was shut down, and so many other sectors, health and education, was affected. Following what seems to be this stalemate now, what should we expect to happen this week as statement from the Nigeria Labour Congress and perhaps an action?
The fact is this, that we, the federal government, including the National Assembly, are the ones who have the call. It's their call now. It is not our call. Our demand is there for them to look at and send a federal executive bill, an executive bill to the National Assembly. And now for the National Assembly to look at what we have demanded, the various facets of the law, and then come up with a National Minimum Wage Act that meets our demand. If that does not meet our demand, we have given the federal government a 1 week notice to look at the issues. And that 1 week expires tomorrow. If after tomorrow, we have not seen any tangible response from the federal government, the organs of the organized labor will meet. The relevant organs will meet to decide on what next. And so it is not in my hands to tell you what we are going to do now, but it's in the hands of the organs. And these organs are made up of people from every part of Nigeria. These organs are made up of people from every religion in Nigeria. They will all meet and decide on the direction to go. But that is largely going to be dependent on what the federal government and National Assembly does in a few days' time.
So what time does it expire tomorrow? What time does it expire tomorrow? What time
it expires tomorrow by midnight tomorrow. It expires.
Okay, so what is the nature of action that we should expect from Labour? The nature of reaction that we should expect from Labour? Will you be calling a strike if the federal government refuses to shift ground from its 62,000 naira?
It was clear what we said. We said we were relaxing a nationwide indefinite strike. It's like you are putting a pause on it. And so if you put a pause on something and the organs that govern us as trade unions decide that we should remove that pause, if we remove that pause, it means we go back to what was in existence before. And it's also important that at this juncture that because you mentioned the national grid, it's also important that I use this to also clarify that when workers embark on withdrawal of service, a strike connotes withdrawal of service. If we withdraw our service, okay, what happens is that the machines will not run themselves. The machines will stop operating. And that is what happens all over the world. Workers have withdrawn their services. So if we withdraw our services, things will not work as they were working before. And that is what we have been doing. All this while, and that is why yes, and that is why
we're going to wind down. Just a minute. Okay. Since we're dwelling on the issue of grid, your action has been described by the Senate President as sabotage, including the SGF has described it as treasonable felony. How is Labour receiving that statement?
Well, our position is clear in the media already. The SGF statement was unfortunate. For somebody who occupies the sensitive position that he occupies, he has to understand that you do not make such statements when there is an ongoing negotiation, because it inflames and actually creates a situation of aggression. And the one from the Senate President is also, and that was why we said that the Senate President and the SGF should look in the mirror for those who are committing treasonable felony in Nigeria and for those who are sabotaging the economy. We are not the ones that are sabotaging the economy. They should look in the mirror to see the ones who are sabotaging the economy. The ones that are sabotaging this economy are not in the workplaces. They are the ones that wear abada. They are the ones that drive in expensive convoys all over Nigeria.
All right, Ms. Onyeka, if you can unmute, I understand that. Can you just unmute? So we're throwing the last question. We're totally out of time. Ms. Onyeka, if you can hear me, can you unmute? Oh dear. All right. I hope that we're totally out of time.
We're running out of time, but
I wanted to find out some numbers from him, but I can see Mr. Onyeka, if you're back, can you hear me now? Can you hear me, Mr. Onyeka?
I can hear you now very well.
Just one last question in 30 seconds. So, where will Labour, I presume that Labour is not going to stay on 250,000. Is 100,000 naira fair?
100,000 naira is a price by 100,000 naira. And I ask you, would you survive on that? Would you survive on a bag of rice plus 12,000 naira?
Right.
Will you survive on that? And that is the answer.
Okay.
So 100,000 naira, we have never contemplated that.
All right.
We are people who are responsible to some people in Nigeria, and we have to work towards that.
All right, we'll see how this goes. Final note. Can you tell us the states that are not even paying the 30,000 naira yet?
Kwara State, for example, is not paying 30,000 naira yet. Anambra State is not paying 30,000 naira yet. You know, the 30,000 naira minimum wage. You know, the minimum wage has a lot of components. And you have most of these states, as agreed by the government itself, about 5 of them, that are not paying minimum wage. And that is a criminal. Because if you breach the law, it means that you are lawless. And that is lawlessness. And the federal government should have taken action against them, but they didn't.
All right, Mr. Onyeka, we have many more questions for you, but we'll leave it there for now. And I hope that we can secure your assurances that essential services will not be affected. For instance, there were reports that in some hospitals, the process of surgery was stopped during the strike. I wish you could react to that, but that's an appeal. I want to thank you very much for your time on the program. We've been talking with Mr. Chris Onyeka, the Assistant General Secretary of the Nigeria Labour Congress, who joined us via Zoom to provide updates on the ongoing negotiation and Labour's next line of action. Thank you very much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me, my sister. God bless you.
All right, that's how it's been in what seems to be a week that will be very testy, both for government, the private sector, and the generality of Nigerians. Whatever the outcome of the test is, we hope that it will be favorable to everyone eventually. Guys.
It's coming down now to what Labour will do and what the federal government will do. So we're all watching and hoping that there'll be a meeting point. Thank you for watching. I'm Jeff Rosano.
I will be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
Sunrise Daily is next. Stay with us. I'm Karen. Goodbye.